Welcome in, everybody, to another edition of the Philly Experience podcast. My name is Max Gretzel, joined by Tanner Gilmartin and Tyre Hood. Tanner, I got to ask you again real quick before we jump into the show. I know you had another trip because you're taking trips all over the place. And T, you got one coming up yourself, so that'll be a lot of fun. And I'm tying this in today because Tanner's trip wasn't a vacation trip. I mean, in a way it was. In a way it was a vacation trip, but it ties into this because it was a Phillies trip related to the Pittsburgh Pirates. And the Phils just had a pretty poor series overall in Pittsburgh, even though they were able to salvage the last game of that series. So we definitely have to touch on that as well. Eagles, will start with them today and talk about training camp, a few things that team wants to mention here as we kick things off. And then, of course, jump into a little bit of the NBA draft, which maybe to some people in their minds think it's lost a little bit of its luster.
We
T
know it's
brought up a
hard.
good point off camera a little bit earlier about the fact that the Sixers are no longer in the lottery. And maybe that's some of the reason why Sixer fans aren't as excited because all of our picks, hopefully for now and maybe in a couple of years down the road, are going to be in the late 20s or maybe even around 30. Hopefully, if we can get there someday. So, T, we'll start off with you and talk about the Eagles in training camp here. I know the big story last week was Steven Nelson signing as cornerback number 2 on this team, and I've heard mixed reviews so far from what I've been watching and seeing on Twitter with videos and tweets from reporters about Jalen Hurts missing some easy throws, making some solid throws. I've heard also him missing a few guys that are, on set 7-on-0 drills and things of that nature, missing some open receivers when there's really no defense even on the field, which kind of concerns me. Again, I'm still trying to be here and buy into Hurts as a starter. Why should I not buy into him in training camp so far?
So here's the thing. Yeah, when training camp first started last week, yeah, Jalen Hurts was horrible. That's putting it nicely. That's about as nice as pretty much I can put it. But it seems like Jalen Hurts is getting better over time. He's getting chemistry with his receivers. He's getting chemistry with the running backs. He's getting better at his throws. Today is actually the first day of practice with full pads on. So, I'm still tracking that as well. But you know what? Jalen Hurts is a young quarterback. And look, most I'm tired of the rhetoric that guys have to come in to these leagues and they have to be instant contributors. Like, this is not the case here. As a matter of fact, when Jalen Hurts was drafted, Jalen Hurts was supposed to be a backup. He wasn't slated to be a starter anytime soon. However, due to some unforeseen circumstances with a quarterback that has now an injured foot, which we will get into a little later, let me calm down. He has been thrust into the starting quarterback position. So because of these things, all I'm going to say is, listen, it's training camp, and I'm just saying to everybody, practice patience. All right, just relax. It's training camp. They're working out the kinks of everything. This is a new coaching staff. This is a new coaching. This is a new offensive playbook, and people are still getting it together. People are still learning on the fly. Listen, it just takes some time. Just relax. That's all I'm saying is just as Aaron Rodgers once said, just relax.
I got real quick here, Tanner. I want to go to you next because we got breaking news into the Philly Experience podcast, and I think Tanner, you
Really?
might already know what it is. Everybody getting the updates here. Andre Drummond has signed a 1-year contract with the 76ers to be the backup center of Joel Embiid. So, Tanner, you real quick, your reaction to Andre Drummond signing in Philly?
You know what? That definitely fills the gap for Dwight Howard. Now he went to the Lakers, and you're like, who's going to be that guy to step up when Embiid's not in the game? And for Andre Drummond, an experienced guy like him to come in, it definitely gives you hope for the upcoming season. But I know us as Sixers fans have been checking our phones constantly looking for a big move or where Ben Simmons is going, especially during the draft, because we didn't think Ben Simmons, I think us three didn't think Ben Simmons was going to be here after the draft. We were expecting some movement. We were talking about maybe that draft pick at 28 is not going to be there for the Sixers because they trade it. But the asking price for Daryl Morey is high, but I'm not mad at it because you have a guy like Ben Simmons who's very young. He was rookie of the year. He's an all-star guy going in. And if it might be run it back Philly again. And now you have a little bit of awkwardness between Ben Simmons and the organization, especially after seeing himself and so many trade rumors ghosting the team. It's going to be a complicated offseason, but when you bring Andre Drummond in, a guy who can be a leader, sort of a bench leader, I guess you could say, for this team, that's definitely good news for the Sixers. It's not bad.
No doubt. And last night we see Dwight Howard going back to the Lakers. And now one of the Lakers centers and Andre Drummond comes to Philly. It's almost a flip-flop of some sorts, but you get a younger Andre Drummond. I think the contract details haven't come out yet, but I'm expecting somewhere around 1 year, $5 million, $4 million range for Andre Drummond. I think that's what I'm hearing. It could be more than that. But the thing is, we're talking about a guy in Andre Drummond who just a couple of years ago with Detroit thinking that he could get a pretty large, hefty contract. And then, I think maybe not his individual play, but couple that with playing in Detroit and playing on a poor team and, not really getting a lot of national attention, struggling more and more the last season and a half, maybe. Of course, in the bubble, the Pistons didn't get to go that one season because they didn't have a good enough record. So overall, Andre Drummond, 2 years later, after having one of the best rebounding years of his career, is now coming to Philly on a very cheap contract. And I think Dwight Howard, a guy that people were fans of in this city, I wasn't a huge fan of him. I thought I kind of just got sick and tired of the technical fouls, the meaningless, aggressiveness on the court where he would literally jump. What was that one play in the playoffs where he jumped on Trae Young's back? I mean, just some really stupid plays where at first it was fun in games. You get a guy with a lot of energy, a lot of excitement, a lot of antics on the sideline with the Frosties and whatnot. But at the end of the day, when I'm trying to sit here and win a championship, I don't have time for kid drama. I'm trying to win a title, especially in the playoffs. He had a couple of decent games, but a guy you just can't really rely on. And again, for the veteran minimum, I get it. You take it. But I think Andre Drummond could come in here. I know him and Embiid have history, but I still think Andre Drummond in a right role could still be productive. I don't know what you guys think, but I think he could.
Some may say that Andre Drummond is Joel Embiid's son, but that is up for debate.
Well, I will say this. I think the way the Lakers used him last year, him along with Marc Gasol, really wasn't a good fit there in LA. I think with LeBron, Anthony Davis, Marc Gasol, of course, I mentioned, there's a lot of bigs clogging up the paint. I thought I liked a lot from what I saw with him in Cleveland before the Cavaliers traded for Jared Allen, who they just gave $100 million to. They traded for Jared Allen mid-season. And once Andre Drummond, his minutes declined and he had to kind of split, I think he kind of maybe lost a little bit of his game overall. I think his game, suffered because of that. I hope that he can come in here and really buy into this Philly culture. I think he's a hard-nosed player, which I like. And again, I'm big on culture here in Philly. You got to love the city. You got to buy in. I think he will. I think, Embiid taking him under his wing, hopefully. Of course, they play two separate games with Embiid being a lot more polished around the rim and even taking those step-out jumpers. But at the end of the day, to give us some run, maybe 18 to 20 minutes, but also having a guy with experience, a guy who, if Embiid needs to miss a game here or there for rest, you have a guy that can definitely go out there and maybe give you 30 minutes. Because Dwight Howard, he's not a guy that can give you 30 minutes anymore. He would only give you around 17, which is one of the reasons we had to play Tony Bradley a lot early on last season. So hopefully Andre Drummond is a guy that can come in here. And he's not going to be a world beater by any means, but we're trying to really still surround this team with players. And again, Ben Simmons, I think, is the main thing we're still all focused on. But let's talk about Jalen Hurts. I want to get back to that conversation that we were having early on, too, because like I said, I'm still trying to buy into Jalen Hurts. I haven't done it yet. I truthfully don't think Jalen Hurts is going to win a Super Bowl with the Eagles if I had to bet on it right now. But again, it doesn't mean I hate the guy. I still want to give him a chance. I really don't want to trade for Deshaun Watson now that those rumors have died down in recent weeks. But Tanner, I didn't get your opinion on the Jalen Hurts situation, of course, and what you've heard, what you've seen from him with mixed reviews early on in training camp.
Well, what I have saw, and this is something that I already knew, and a lot of other people already knew, that Jalen Hurts can be a leader, and he showed that he can be a leader in practice and the way that he commands and huddles and stuff like that. But one thing I saw that his game was really improved upon is the deep ball. Now, he was missing a few throws, but the coaching staff has really been impressed by his improvement with the deep ball. And I mean, that's got to be helped by Devontae Smith, who is unfortunately injured. He's week to week with that knee sprain. But just think of the possibilities. Jalen Hurts developing that deep ball. Now he can run. His running. I believe I was watching a few videos on his grades so far for spring training, and his running game is at an A right now. And that's something that we can definitely see just from the few games he played last season, the way he could just carry dudes on his back, diving into the past the goal line. I forget what game it was now, but he pulled a full-grown man into the end zone on his back, and this is a quarterback we're talking about.
Arizona, I think Arizona.
Yeah, the Arizona game.
The strength of Jalen Hurts is not questioned. Everyone knows that he's a strong guy. But for me, this is just, or I've been saying spring training. This isn't baseball, but we know what I'm talking about here. For training camp, this is something that I don't really get too involved in, though, because you could have guys who are just showing out in training camp, really impressing everyone. But once they sit on that field opening for the first game of the season, it could be a completely different story. But I'm really like seeing the amount of positivity going towards Jalen Hurts, and how now these Deshaun Watson rumors have died down. So that really means that this team is seeing what Jalen Hurts can do, and they're impressed by it.
It's about damn time that they're impressed by it, because of the simple fact that, look, you drafted this guy in the second round. That's a pretty high draft pick, and I'm sorry, but like I said before the breaking news, you just gotta let guys develop. I think that's the one thing that, across, every league, teams just don't allow that no more. They expect these guys to come out of college and just start, contributing right away. And the reality is that's not necessarily always going to be the case. I'm sorry. It's just not going to happen. Like, sometimes guys are going to need time to develop. It happens. And we just need to practice patience with it at this point. All right. Look what happened the last time we threw everything at a quarterback. He got up and left and didn't want us no more. So let this guy let's take our time. Let's develop him. Let's get him comfortable in the offense, and let's go from here. Now, if he shows this year signs that you don't necessarily want to have him as a franchise quarterback, then you address that by season's end. But right now, let's just see what Jalen Hurts has. All right, let's just everybody relax, please, relax.
Yeah. I think that's one of the main things that we have to do is just to see how this season plays out. And of course, you have the 3 first-round picks next year, hopefully. And this is kind of when I want to bring up the Carson Wentz situation, getting hurt in Indianapolis. The positive of this situation, if we could take one out of it, is that even if Wentz doesn't play the 75% of snaps, we still get that second-round pick, which is still going to be relatively high. It's not a first-round pick, of course, but it's still something compared to nothing. Is a big picture that I'm focused on right now. But at the end of the day, a guy who, I think we were talking about it off camera. We talked about the great season in 2017. Then, he gets hurt, obviously tears the ACL. Those things happen. Rehabs, comes back. We'll see how he looks the following year. Plays decent at best, in my opinion, and then breaks his back against the Giants halfway through that next season. At that point, you're dealing with damaged goods, and you really had to make a decision. Are we going to give it one more year? Are we going to cut bait with it immediately? Ultimately, they made the wrong decision. They gave him that fat contract. Came back in 2020, really no injuries to deal with at all, and he just played poorly. So they just ran the course 1 year too long. Now he goes over to Indianapolis, of course, has another injury. I mean, this is a guy you're talking about with knee injuries, back injuries. Luckily, there hasn't been any arm injuries with him, because you never want to see a player just continue to have, a lot of talent, but just get hurt constantly. And now with a foot injury, I mean, this is going to affect his mobility, because that was the main things that he was great at early on in his career, was being able to escape the pocket and run. He's not really going to have that same athleticism anymore with his knee injury, his foot injury, and now you're talking about a back with a quarterback injury. It sucks not only for Wentz but also now for the Eagles possibly.
First off, if you've been under a rock, here's what's going on. So we've been fussing about this scenario since the trade went down. All right, in order for the Philadelphia Eagles to get a first-round draft pick, Carson Wentz needs to play 75% of snaps and no playoffs, or 70% of snaps and the Colts make the playoffs. Now, of course, the scenario we want is the 75% of snaps and no playoffs, because then that first-round pick becomes ours, and the worse that the Colts play, the better the draft pick. I kind of seen the scenario happen, but apparently he's had a foot injury since high school that's gone under the radar of every single medical staff known to man. So when the news first went down, my initial thought was,
This is some bullshit.
like that was my initial thought, and then I just start outraging because I'm like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I thought would happen. All right, this is the exact scenario. Carson Wentz getting hurt sometime in training camp or in the games and costing us our doggone draft pick. I knew something like this was going to happen. Man's had one job, one damn job. Couldn't even get that right.
I am pissed off.
Like, it is absolutely ridiculous. Yeah. Oh, I got a headache.
If I could introduce a conspiracy theory, because I, for one, am I'm all about conspiracy theories for the most part.
Oh, please do.
On a sports base. But I think Carson Wentz, after he leaves the Eagles, maybe he had that foot injury had been bothering him for a while, and he understands the details of the trade and how if he plays 75% or 70% of the snaps, depending on how the team does, the Eagles couldn't get that first round pick if he doesn't play at least 70% of the snaps. So I'm thinking he's going into Indianapolis. He knows he's now their franchise guy.
Mm-hmm.
He says, instead of playing injured my first season for this team, why don't I hold back? I get my foot fixed, screw the Eagles, and then I come back much stronger next season for the Colts so I can really impress these guys. Now, I'm just saying this is just a conspiracy theory from me, but I feel like since Carson Wentz was so hurt and so just carried about the wrong way about this whole situation with the Eagles, I'm thinking maybe it wasn't out of the realm of possibility that he's so pity that he would do this to the organization.
You got to be a sick human being. You got to be a sick human being to do that. But you never know. I mean,
so petty.
It really is. If that is the case, then that is embarrassing.
That's petty to the nth degree. Jesus.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think on the Carson Wentz note, you look at the Colts team this year. Of course, we focus on the fact that he has to play 75% or 70%, and the Colts make the playoffs. But if you look at that team, Quentin Nelson, now their star guard on the offensive line is dealing with an injury. Their offensive receiving core with T.Y. Hilton, who's getting old, Michael Pittman Jr., promising young rookie, but no experience. It's shaky. The main thing that made the Colts great last year, in my opinion, was their defense. We'll see if that's able to stay, I guess stay playing or ranked at a high level around the league. Of course, Jonathan Taylor there is a good running back. So you hope they're able to be successful, make the playoffs at this point, because the more we look at it now, 5 to 12 weeks is the time frame for Wentz. So we don't know if that's going to be missing week 1 or missing, the first 4 weeks if this doesn't heal properly. So if you're a betting man right now, you're looking at it and you're saying to yourself probably that Wentz might not play 75%. So now we have to basically be Colts fans and hope they make the playoffs, because Wentz that would bring it down to like 70%, which I know only 5% difference, but still it's better than nothing, I should say. And with that, when we look at the Eagles, and I want to now focus on the defense here. We talked about Jalen Hurts. Obviously, Devontae Smith's dealing with that knee injury. Should be minor. I don't think it's anything too serious. But again, another just headache that we have to deal with as Eagles fans. Another first-round pick getting banged up early on.
So before you get 100% into the defense, I do want to say this real quick. So there's one battle which I think everybody predictably, knew that was going to come true, and it looks like that Jordan Mailata is taking a strong hold of that left tackle position, because apparently Andre Dillard has just been getting worked by everybody, by Derek Barnett and everybody else who's lined up opposite him. And Andre Dillard's the only one at the left tackle position that's been able to hold his position with efficiency. So looks like Jordan Mailata is going to be your left tackle for the future.
I like it, T. I thought he was going to regardless. I think Andre Dillard, I haven't really seen Andre Dillard in action, whether that be training camp, whether that be preseason games. That's going to be big for me to see, because obviously the guy's a first round pick coming out from Washington State, I believe. Is that correct, T, out there? Or was it Stanford, one or the other?
Yeah.
And I think we were high on him. I think last year we actually thought of him as maybe as trade bait. And now it's gotten to the point where we're just literally running in circles here talking about Eagles training camp. I mean, that's where Philadelphia sports has left us. We're sitting here talking about training camp and preseason Eagles football games. with a team that some expect to win maybe 5 or 6 games. I mean, I think we should all be depressed right now, in all honesty. I mean, that's where we are at. I mean, it's just really a shame considering we were going off the highs with the Sixers, the highs with the Eagles a couple years ago. And now the Phillies, who we're going to get into soon, have kind of just been so mediocre that the Eagles have started early for us. And that's why we continuously go on and on and on about why the Eagles are going to be good this year. At least I'm holding out hope. I mean, we did the show a couple weeks ago, 10 wins for me. That this is a team that is number one in the city for a reason. And again, Jalen Hurts with a lot of pressure on him to really lead this offense. So many question marks. I know we love to talk about it, but really, it really is with especially the coaching staff. And I know T's high on the coaching staff. I mean, how many times did we come on the show last year and bash Jim Schwartz about his terrible defensive schemes and things like that? So it's a really a waiting game. We can talk about it in circles and give our opinions as much as we want. But with that, I want to flip the script here. And I really, before we get into the Phils, I want to talk about the NBA because I want to get your guys' opinions on the fact that it has lost some of its loss during the last couple of years. Not only because
Hey, Max, I think Tanner, did you want to bring up something about the NFL as well?
I did. If we had time, I want to talk about this. The NFL and the COVID protocol that they're putting forth with this upcoming season. Just reading the a paragraph from Kevin Patra, an NFL writer right now. As the NFL approaches the 2021 season, the league informed clubs that it would not extend the season to accommodate a COVID-19 outbreak among unvaccinated players that causes a game cancellation. NFL Network's Tom Pelissero reported Thursday that the NFL sent a memo to its club stating that if a game cannot be rescheduled during the 18-week schedule due to a COVID-19 outbreak among unvaccinated players, the team with the outbreak will forfeit and be credited a loss.
What?
So now this is news that we've heard about the last week. This is from July 22nd. But I wanted to get your guys' opinion, trying to avoid any political routes, of course. This is strictly about football and the rules that they're putting forth. How do you guys feel about this? And do you think that every player in the NFL should get vaccinated? Or do you think that the rules are unfair with the forfeit put forth?
In terms of your last question, what you asked, and that was, should every player get vaccinated? Honestly, that's really to each his own. I'm not going to say whether or not a player should or shouldn't do with their body. That's not my position. I personally have made the personal choice to get vaccinated, but that's just my choice. You know, nobody forced me to do it. So I'm not going to expect anybody. I'm not going to force anybody to get vaccinated. That is their choice. That is their body. I'm not one of those people. However, this is an interesting stipulation because now if you are the person who's unvaccinated and you start the outbreak with your team, there are ramifications to that. Okay, so I believe that I think they said the Eagles are one of the teams that are 90% vaccinated. So that's really good. So the likelihood of a breakout of a COVID breakout happening amongst the Eagles it's slim. But in terms of the other teams who's not even close, I think there's some teams in the 40-50 percentile rate. Like they run a risk of having an outbreak and catching losses. And the NFL is clearly making a strong stance as to, look, we're not going to reschedule games for you because you decided you didn't want to be vaccinated and you want to cause an outbreak at the expense of your team. So look, we made these rules and look, we're going to live with it. And the NFL did this for a number of reasons. One of the main reasons is, they're selling these TV contracts to, Fox, CBS, NBC, they're expected to play these games at a certain time. And if they don't, then the NFL loses money. That's a part of the contract. So the NFL's like, look, I'm looking out for my pockets. You messing around and not doing what you're supposed to do. Hey, if you wanted to make your choice, well, guess what? We're making ours too. We'll give you an L. So now it's in the team's hands. The NFL has basically taken this situation and putting it in team's hands. And look, I'm all for it. Hey, it is what it is.
I know DeAndre Hopkins has been one of the main guys outspoken about, not getting the vaccine, but having to forfeit, wins and losses and things like that. So it's understandable. I mean, without turning it into a political issue, I think one of the main reasons it has to be brought up is because people aren't getting the vaccine or are getting the vaccine for different reasons. I mean, there's some people that are just being stubborn and not getting the vaccine for, no specific reason whatsoever. There's some people that have religious beliefs and things like that, which is completely understandable. So I think if you look at a big picture, I don't think you can force everybody to get the vaccine because people have, different beliefs and different reasons to not get it. From an NFL standpoint, does that mean that teams should be forced to forfeit games? I don't think I would go that far, only because I saw what happened last year, and I saw a Denver Broncos team with a receiver at quarterback for one game, which, as a product for the NFL, is not what they want. But to just flat out say we're not going to play the games and we're going to force people to quit or forfeit the games, I think that's probably going a little too far, in my opinion.
Max, here's the thing. The only way you're going to forfeit a game is in extreme measures. Like if most of your team gets COVID, that's the only way I can see a scenario like that happening where a team's going to forfeit the game. Like it would have to be the majority of the team, like to the point where you can't even go into your practice squad and grab guys and play a game. Like that's the only scenario I see that happening. And look, like I said before, I understand your stance. But, just talking and thinking from an NFL standpoint of view, I understand their stance. Look, I told these companies that we're going to play these games at this time on this date. And guess what? If I don't uphold my end of the contract, I lose money. So as a result, guess what? You're going to have some things taken away from you as well. So I understand it from that point of view. But like I said, I only see games being canceled in an super extreme scenario. I don't think it's going to happen, but
and I can definitely see both sides with the NFL and the players side. We mentioned Hopkins, one of the best wide receivers in the game, talking about maybe rethinking his future if the NFL really forces players to get the vaccine. But the thing is, nothing's foolproof. There could be just one player on a team that is unvaccinated. Something happens, he's in a large gathering or something, brings it back to the team and gets maybe a few guys sick, like a staff, and then that can start an outbreak as well. But for me, these guys are getting these guys are getting paid to play the game that they love to play. They're getting money, a lot of money, more money than a lot of other jobs. And for them, I mean, that's just, there's the government workers, they have to get their vaccine to work for the government. And they're working for the NFL, and you can't force anyone to put anything into their body if they don't want to. It's just not right. But I definitely understand forfeits because you're other teams that are following along with guidelines, practicing social distancing, doing everything they can. And then a visiting team comes in and they get everyone else sick. It's that visiting team's fault for not following along, for bringing an outbreak over. And then this is going to go into fans too. You go into some states where the vaccination levels are just below 50%. And you're going to have both sides of fans next to each other. And there's going to be games that are going to be most likely postponed during this season, especially the way things are going now with COVID getting a little worse. Not to be a doomsayer, but I do agree with the forfeitures. And I think that T brought up the point where it's going to have to be maybe where you're going on a practice squad, and then Max mentioned the Broncos, and that could happen. But I think the NFL really does not want to cancel the game, especially after making this season one game longer. Now, the stuff's going to happen, but I'm going to say I do agree with the rules that the NFL is implementing.
The thing that I think about it, or the main reason, I guess, with the whole with regard to the whole forfeiting situation, I don't think it's going to get that far.
Yeah,
I don't think there's ever going to be a case where the team's going to be has to forfeit. Now, again, from Tanner's standpoint, if you have 70-80% of your team that has COVID, I mean, you don't want to bring the whole team onto a plane and fly them into a different city or something like that. Definitely understandable. That's a terrible idea because there could lead to more outbreaks or whatever. But at the end of the day, I don't think it would get. I mean, of course, like the Broncos probably had the worst of it last year, or the Ravens had it too. I guess that 1 week against the Steelers, but the Broncos probably had it worse, and they still didn't forfeit their games, and they literally threw a receiver out there at quarterback. So I think it's in the extreme circumstances where you really don't have any other avenues to go, and the forfeit's really just the only thing you can do to really, stay safe and whatnot, or maybe a player tests positive. Maybe some players test positive 2 weeks prior to the game, and then by that time they don't have it anymore. But maybe some of their teammates get it. I mean, it's tough because it's not a period of time where say you get it on a Monday and you can play on a Sunday. You got to do 14 days, so you're gonna miss a game. It's just gonna come down to how is that timeline gonna fall? Is a player gonna get COVID on a Wednesday and they can't play the Sunday, but they can play the Sunday after that maybe? And will they have enough players? It's math. I mean, that's what it's going to come down to, depending on a forfeit or not. It's going to be math with the amount of players and things like that people will be able to field and bring, to a team. And again, road games are another story. I mean, when you got to travel and go to hotels and you're eating meals and things like that, instead of just being with your family in isolation and whatnot, that's going to be, it could depend on what team has the outbreak. Is it a road team that has an outbreak or the home team? So many different factors that go into it. And it's going to be another interesting season. I mean, it's not going away anytime soon, and we know that. So hopefully it's not as crazy as it was last year, and we'll have fans back in the stadium, but there's still going to be a fair share of issues. With that being said, now I real quick with the NBA draft, because the Sixers aren't in the lottery anymore. We have the 28th pick. We take Jaden Springer, of course. And at the end of the day, it's a guy that either will see rotational minutes, being 18 years old, one of the youngest players in the draft, and basically a raw talent that we have to groom, or will he be part of the Ben Simmons trade or whatever? I mean, who really knows? But at the end of the day, you're not really expected to do much as a 28th overall pick. We saw Tyrese Maxey last year as a mid-20s pick, play pretty well in a reserve role for the Sixers. But at the end of the day, I don't think this pick means too much. I think Cameron Thomas was one guy that I truly wanted. He went to LSU, this guy can just put the ball in the basket and really fill it up at a high level. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted him at pick 28. Unfortunately, he went pick 27 to the New York Nets as if they really needed any more firepower. But at the end of the day, I think taking Springer, a raw talent, I don't expect much of him in a Sixer uniform. I personally think he may be traded, to be honest with you. But overall, I just want to see your guys' opinion on it doesn't have to be Sixer related. It could be NBA draft related as a whole. We know Kate Cunningham went number 1 overall to the Pistons. I know at the law, again, we use that word luster, losing its luster. Tanner, again, another thing where he mentioned maybe off camera that the NFL is obviously still most prominent when it comes to drafting and whatnot, but still NBA draft, something that we've paid attention to in recent years because the Sixers have always had a high pick, but this year they did not.
And you alluded to it when you first brought up the topic, because me and you were talking about it, off camera, and about, why, because even going into the draft, like there was just a lack of excitement. Like typically, everybody get hyped for the draft, and we would be doing mocks, and when us just as a group, we would be texting each other back and forth who we wanted. That didn't happen this year. I think ultimately, I think it's because the Sixers are now in a position where, you know what? What's the point of looking into the draft? Like, seriously, what's the point of looking into the draft for us now? Because we're not going to pick in the lottery anytime soon. All right. We're a championship contending team. So we're always going to pick near the bottom of the draft. And by then, it's very rare that you're going to grab somebody that, is really going to contribute to the team, because for the most part, you're looking for players who are going to contribute now. Like, you're not looking for prospects. You're not looking for guys who you can develop, or, somebody you can stash away for the future. You're looking for guys who's going to help you on the team now. And you're not going to get that for the most part by the end of the draft. So there was a lack of excitement here in the city. I'm not even going to front. Now I'm looking at Jalen Springer's stats from his 1 year at Tennessee, 12.5 points per game. All right. He shot about 43% from three, and shot about little over 80% from the free throw line. So this kid has skills, but once again, at 12.5 points a game, that's mediocre for college standards. And like I said, I kind of agree with you. He just might be trade bait. Unfortunately, I hate to say that about a young guy. I wish him the best for his career. And, if he does stay here, I hope he does develop with us and develop into a player that contributes. But right now, we're looking for players that are going to contribute and win us a championship, not guys that we need to develop. So, yeah, he might be just trade bait. Hate to say that, but yeah.
Personally, I think this is a pick that the Sixers did not expect to have. I think that they were looking forward to maybe trading this pick and having something out of this Ben Simmons drama right now. But I think they did the best with the situation that they were given. And from what I've seen and heard, Jaden Springer was a good pick at 28. He's another point guard. He's compared to Tyrese Maxey a lot as well. I think going into maybe is he trade bait? It's a possibility, but I think it would more likely be Tyrese Maxey being traded before Springer.
Well, I agree because you have a year of experience with Tyrese Maxey. You have a year on camera. You have a year of film to see him and his strengths and his weaknesses. Also an older player, not that he's old, but he Springer being only 18 years old, obviously has a lot of room to grow, a lot of raw talent there. And that's kind of one of the things that Tennessee, the Volunteers, bring into their programs from a college level. A lot of raw, young talent. Skill set still needs to be developed, but they have the athleticism to really develop into something. I think that's one of the big things I've seen being a super college basketball fan. And one of the big things that I've seen with not only Tennessee, Springer specifically, is the fact that they have certain things they do well and certain things they still have to work on, most like every other college prospect. But the size, the athleticism I like about him, whether he can continue to improve and grow and things like that, that remains to be seen. But at the end of the day, we'll just have to play a waiting game here because at the end of the day, like I just said, Simmons trade coming soon. Hopefully, a lot goes into it.
It better because I'm sick of the cryptic tweets. I'm sick of the fact that I'm sick of everything at this point. Do what you gotta do, and just get rid of this man. All right, just be rid of Ben Simmons once and for all. All right, so we can all move on with our lives. Just please, he's got to go. He has got to go.
Do you guys think it'll work if the Sixers do end up keeping Ben Simmons? Like, how would that work? I already mentioned the awkwardness, the potential of how awkward it would be with Ben Simmons just returning after you have Embiid basically throwing Ben Simmons under the bus after that game. Doc Rivers had some things to say. Dwight Howard was standing up for Ben Simmons, but he's not on the team anymore. Coincidentally, he is on the Lakers, and that's a team that's always been connected to Ben Simmons. But I don't know how this run it back method's going to work if the Sixers do that.
It won't work.
Yeah, you can't. You can't run it back with Ben Simmons. Not after what he did. Not after that horrible playoff performance this past year. We're not even talking about previous years past. We're just talking about this past one. There is no way that you have a coach basically throw a player under the bus. You have players throwing this player under the bus. They're your star player, by the way, your franchise player. There is no scenario that you can come up with to justify bringing back Ben Simmons. Like, there's no freaking way. The only way you can justify bringing back Ben Simmons is if you couldn't find a trade partner to match your wants and your demands. So you're going to try to ride out with him for part of the year, but you still intend on trading him sometime during the year. Other than that, there is no scenario that you can come up with to bring this man back. There is none.
My whole thing with Ben Simmons, regardless of the talents on the court, is all about his mentality. He doesn't want to get better. He hasn't shown any improvement whatsoever. He's oblivious to all the fans and things like that on social media, laying poolside, really posting pictures of him, whether it be, chilling on vacation or whatnot. I don't want to harp on the whole Wimbledon thing, but at the end of the day, I mean, that's out in the public eye. He knows that. I mean, that's another thing. It's in the public eye and he knows the camera's going to be on him. So things like that, little petty things, like high school drama, stuff like that. I mean, you're a grown man, get in the gym, start working hard. You're in Philadelphia. That's another thing. I literally don't think, I think that just goes in one ear and out the other with him. I mean, no one understands what it's like to play in Philadelphia until you're here. I mean, and the fact that he's been here 5 years, he should know the expectations and what he needs to bring to the table. Because playing in Philadelphia is not like playing in Milwaukee. It's not like playing in Orlando where people don't care whatsoever. I mean, this is a town where you better deliver or you're going to be gone. And you better, even if you don't have the most ultra talent in the world, you still better be able to work hard and chip in and do your part.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now,
How about Tobias Harris? Sorry, T, for interrupting, but how about Tobias Harris being shocked by the Sixers? That came as a surprise to me because one, you have a guy you can't get rid of now, and then you're going to go ahead and just try to get rid of that number. He was at some points of the season that number 2 guy. And it seems like the Sixers are really just trying to get rid of anybody now because they see that their asking price for Ben Simmons is high, which it should be. And that'll be my next question, what you guys think of the high asking price. But do you agree with also shopping Tobias Harris?
No, not at all. I don't agree with shopping Tobias Harris. Tobias Harris can be easily be a number 3 or number 4 option. I just think he was elevated to a number 2 option based off of the fact that you're not going to get a whole lot of scoring from Ben Simmons. All right, because of Ben Simmons and his lack of ability or his lack of his unwillingness to shoot the ball, it elevated everybody a notch up on the meter. Of course, Joel Embiid is going to be the number 1 option, but everybody else got pushed up during that season. Tobias Harris is not a number 2. It's not a number 2 scorer. He's really a number 3 and number 4, and I think he's more comfortable in that position. You just need to go out and find a number 2. All right. You can find a number 2. It's not as hard as finding a number 1, but you need a number 2 scorer. I don't agree with them shopping Tobias Harris. And in terms of what the asking price for it with Ben Simmons, I mean that's just negotiation 101. You start off high, so I can't get mad at that. But if you think you're not going to move your position on how much you're going to get for Ben Simmons, and you think somebody's really going to give you all that you're asking for, you got another thing coming. The entire league knows what Ben Simmons is now. You're not going to get all those things. So do I think ultimately will Daryl Morey come down on his asking price for Ben Simmons? Yeah, I think I will, but you got to start off high, and I can't blame him for that.
God, Ben Simmons, just sit back and just the amount of pain this guy's put us through. Take the shot out of it. The 3-point shot, whatever, the scoring. Take a look at the Milwaukee Bucks last year. You have Giannis Antetokounmpo, you have Joel Embiid. Those are 2 superstar players. Chris Middleton took a huge step forward. He was something. He was a player that I didn't expect him to take that big of a leap forward. That's kind of what I was hoping Tobias Harris would do. And that's kind of where I hope Tobias Harris can get to. And then you look at the third guy they had, and that's Jrue Holiday, a guy that can score when needed, can shoot it a little bit. Very, very, very solid defender. And that's kind of where I wanted Ben Simmons to be, except Ben Simmons probably more talented defensively. Obviously, his wingspan, his height, he can guard 1 through 5, but the offensive game isn't there. My whole thing with Ben Simmons doesn't revolve around anything with the jump shot. It doesn't have anything to do with on the court ability as far as playing in a regular season, scoring, passing. It's about the work ethic and the inability to really buy into it. I don't think it's like he doesn't want to get better. And that's why I think his stock isn't going to get any higher. I think from this point on, you're going to see the same player in a regular season, a guy that's ultra talented. You're going to see the same guy crumble in the playoffs. That's why it's, imperative that we get rid of him now, because there's not going to be a turnaround. And even if there is, we don't have time to wait around for it. Joel Embiid's in his prime right now. We need to go out there and make a trade happen, get whatever you can. I hope it's better than a Malcolm Brogdon or Colin Sexton. I hope it's something bigger than that. I was hoping maybe for a Buddy Hield or De'Aaron Fox, but you need a point guard. That's why I thought Kyle Lowry was great, because Kyle Lowry almost is like a Jrue Holiday type. He's a good defender. He's a gritty guy on defense. He would buy into the city of Philadelphia because he's around here, and he can score the basketball, which Ben Simmons can't do. So if you had Kyle Lowry, Tobias, and Embiid with a couple of role players, that would be very, very solid. Of course, he's in Miami now, so we won't be able to get him. And my last point is PJ Tucker, I thought, was one of the best gets at the trade deadline last year. I mean, PJ Tucker to the Bucks, his gritty style of defense, corner 3, almost like a 3-and-D type player. Very solid defense for what you can do on Kevin Durant in that series. One of the main reasons, in my opinion, why they won. They went 7 games, of course, with the injuries and whatnot. Kyrie being hurt, it is what it is. But PJ Tucker played a pretty solid defense for what you can on Kevin Durant. And that's kind of what the Sixers lacked last year. They lacked like that number 4 guy. If you could have slotted PJ Tucker in there with Harris, Embiid, Curry, and Simmons, that would be a hell of a starting 5. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. So you got to really sit back here. If Daryl Morey, of course, he's a smart guy. He knows what he's doing. But you can't sit here and tell me right now that Ben Simmons is going to come back here and we're going to run this thing back, because again, we're probably just going to be a second or maybe like in my opinion, if Embiid's healthy last year with that knee injury and it's not 100% bothering him, I think we could have beaten the Hawks just because he's a superstar player, and that single handedly could have won us. But we wouldn't have beaten the Nets or the Bucks in the conference finals, and that's kind of think where our ceiling is as long as Ben Simmons is still in a Sixer uniform.
Now, speaking of Kyle Lowry, I'm glad that you brought that up because it's something that me and you discussed off camera, and it's how in the hell are some of these NBA players getting the money that they're getting? This is absolutely ridiculous. I have never seen anything like this in my entire life. I should have played basketball. This is I can at least play defense and rebound the damn ball. This is absolutely ridiculous. Kyle Lowry got a 3-year, $90 million contract to go to Miami. 3 years, 90 million. That's $30 million a year for a 35-year-old. Really? Seriously? This is what we're paying guys now. Duncan Robinson, 5 years, 90 million. Like, this is Norman Powell. Who the hell is Norman Powell? 5 years, $90 million. I just looked up his stats. The guy never touched 20 points per game. Who the hell is Norman Powell?
Rashawn Holmes, 4 years, 55. Kelly Olynyk, 3 years, 37. Furkan Korkmaz, 3 years, 15. Fully guaranteed, by the way, 3 years, 15 mil with the Sixers, fully guaranteed for Korkmaz. Lonzo Ball, 4 years, $85 million with the Bulls. I mean, it is kind of ridiculous, in my opinion. I think Alex Caruso got a really solid chunk of money in Chicago as well there for a guy that really hasn't done anything. Korkmaz again. Korkmaz, yeah, Jared Allen, $100 million. I know it is crazy. Luckily, right now the Sixers don't really have any money to spend right now, so they're not going out there and overspending for these guys. But I agree with you. It is a little ridiculous. I want to real quick wrap this up here with Tanner, and talk about his trip to Pittsburgh. And also, he got to see Kyle Gibson make a debut. Ian Kennedy give up a 2-run home run. It is what it is. I mean, a guy that I thought maybe he can come in, just solidify a closer's role. He's made 2 appearances so far in a Philly uniform. He's given up 2-run home runs, which is not what you want to see. And an old friend in Freddie Galvis coming back to help the defense at shortstop.
Yeah, going about that Pittsburgh trip. First off, we went to game 1 and 3 of the series. Me and a couple of my buddies were able to get seats right behind the Phillies dugout. Nice. At PNC on national television all day long. But you could see our gloomy faces around the 4th inning of the game already. But of course, we stayed through. We were chirping at Joe Girardi. Why are you keeping Vince Velasquez in? No. Right now, Joe. Why are you keeping him in right now? He decided to go sit down on the bench instead of hearing us talk. But going into the actual gameplay, that was a poor performance by the Phillies game 1. But going into game 3, because that was more recent, obviously, is Kennedy coming in, given that 2-run homer. I'm going to bring this up first. The Phillies notched up 15 runs. And it's funny because right before that home run, actually, my guys were talking about wanting to see a home run because the whole series was dry of home runs. You have Jacob Stallings getting that walk-off little whatever that was to end the game. Really just upsetting. You have the worst team in the MLB, and we're sitting there hearing the Pirates fans chirp on us about our performance. It's embarrassing. But going into Kyle Gibson, really strong performance first game for the Phils, and his record was good going into it too. I believe, did he have 10? He had 10 wins going into that game,
around there.
Yeah, around that, and around 3 or 4 losses. So definitely you got Vince Velasquez that's just not going to see a starting spot, hopefully, the rest of the season.
What's he here for?
Kyle Gibson definitely gave me hope until, it was about time to get him out of that game. But still a strong performance out of him. And I just personally, this is just for me, I don't think the Phillies did enough at the trade deadline. I don't know what you guys think.
Kyle Gibson's 7-3 overall record right now, so close to 10. Close. He was an all-star this year, of course, with Texas Rangers. As far as the the trade deadline went, I thought, we got a starting pitcher, which we needed. We got a relief pitcher, which we needed. We got a bat. At least it was for something. I thought we probably could use an outfield bat, but we needed to shore up that defense. Didi Gregorius has been atrocious at shortstop. Alec Boehm has been terrible at third base defensively, even though he did make a great play last night late in that game against the Nationals. But I will say this: I think Freddie Galvis, a guy who kind of was a fan favorite, and also at the end of the day can still swing that bat a little bit. It's not a guy that's going to be an all-star caliber player, but at the end of the day, it's a guy who's going to come in here, a guy who's going to be, a true professional. And I think that is probably out of the three moves we made, probably not the one that's going to stand out most. Of course, Kyle Gibson coming in with a sub-3 ERA, and Ian Kennedy's 16 saves under his belt is where you're going to look to first. But I think when Freddie Galvis is healthy off the IL, I think that's a guy you can truly rely on for leadership, but also play on the field as well.
Hey guys, speaking of trade, so one of the trade pieces that we traded away was Spencer Howard. And he had some very interesting things to say about how the Phillies organization is run. Let's take a listen to this real quick, fellas.
It's a good question. I was kind of all over the place for a bit, and then they sent me back to Lehigh to build up and get the pitch count up to actual starters pitch count. And then Eflin hurt his knee, so then I just filled in that role, and I'm not sure if that was planned to go back and do the 85 to 100 pitches in the big leagues, or if that was forced from Eflin. But I mean, for the most part, it was starting, and yeah, that's it. Yeah, it was tough to try to find a routine in there. I did my best to just focus mostly on what I could control, arm care routine and weightlifting and stuff like that, to try to just be prepared for whatever they threw at me. But even then, like, it's just it was a tough go up there. So I'm very excited to be here.
As I famously said, shut the F up for life. All right. Ain't nobody tell you to start complaining and start, bashing the Phillies organization, because you didn't perform that well when you was here. So that's just my
I got something for Spencer Howard. How about maybe play better? It's just, maybe play better. The ball's on this guy to be complaining and talking about, the Phillies moving him around, because they were trying to give him a chance as much as they could. But you got a 5.72 ERA. Your 0-2 record. You got 17 bases on balls. You're just walking people. As soon as you step on the mound, there's a walk. It's just, he doesn't have the place to be speaking like that. And you know what? I'm not saying I didn't like Spencer Howard, because I wanted him to play the best he could, obviously, because the Phillies really needed pitching. It's just really weird to hear him. It sounds like he was complaining and saying he much would prefer to be out of Philadelphia. And that's strange to me.
Well, I agree partially with what you guys are saying, but here's why I'll disagree with you and just play devil's advocate here. The Phillies organization sucks. All right. And let me clarify. They can't develop guys to save their life. All right. We've seen that. There's nobody in the minor leagues they've developed. Mickey Moniak, a guy that was drafted in the same class as Pete Alonso. Pete Alonso's up here hitting dingers every night. Mickey Moniak can't even crack the major league roster, let alone AAA. So from his standpoint is I completely understand that, they're jerking Spencer Howard around. They really don't know what to use him. I get it. His numbers were terrible. He couldn't get his pitch count up high. But when you tell a guy, we need you to come up and just at first 3-4 innings where you're at right now with your arm, fine, let's do it. He comes up, struggles a little bit. All right, we're going to send you down. We're going to build up your pitch count. Then he's got to come back to Philly because he's basically forced into a role that they didn't really explain to him. He just got forced into it because Eflin got hurt. And then he's got to come up here, and then he's got to, it's a whirlwind. You're back and forth between Lehigh Valley and the major leagues. You're traveling. You're trying to work your arm strength up. You're not pitching well, which mentally, of course, that's going to make you, get screwed up in the head too. But from one standpoint, look, his numbers suck, right? I thought he should have been a relief pitcher. I thought maybe even in the closer's role, because he comes up that first inning, he's a 98, 99 miles an hour on his fastball. Maybe he can, because at the time, Ranger Suarez was still in a middle relief role, and I thought Spencer Howard, the way he can only pitch maybe 3 innings, maybe you just throw him in the closer role and blow guys away with that fastball. It seemed early on in games he was locating his pitches well, and he had good command, but it would fall apart in the 4th inning. He started to walk a lot of guys. He couldn't find the strike zone and things like that. But at first, I thought maybe in a closer's role, he would be better served. then the Phillies wanted to, like Dave Dombrowski at the front office wanted to move him into a starting pitcher role because that's where he was. And again, I want to make this point. I don't know if you guys knew this, that Spencer Howard in high school and college or whatever, when he was drafted as a relief pitcher. He was a relief pitcher wherever he was, high school. He was never a starting pitcher. I think the Phillies drafted him with the upside of a starter, but let's not forget he was never ever a starting pitcher in his career. He was a relief pitcher, and I think that's kind of where maybe the Phillies got their expectations high.
And also to mention, that's 19 runs he gave up in just 7 starts, and not even all the way through the 3rd inning even. So he wasn't a guy that the Phillies really were set on having a permanent spot here in the organization. And I do see his side of things. You definitely don't want to be moving around constantly to Lehigh, back to Philly. And I understand that, but you're a young guy in the MLB. Why waste your time harping on things of the past? And instead, you go in that press conference and talk about the future with the new team that you're on.
And that's the part where
Tell you last thing for me, and I'll throw it to you to close it out.
Yeah,
I like this move for the Phils. They needed a starter. They needed a relief pitcher. They needed some sort of defensive help or an outfielder. They got that. And I think with Spencer Howard, one, he was terrible. His stats show that. But also the Phillies, I don't trust them to build any guys and groom them through an organization. So even if we have good top prospects, we're not going to develop them. So you might as well trade them to a different organization. They're not going to work out here and get what you need for this stretch run. Because truthfully, I believe the Mets are catchable. And as long as Eflin can get healthy and come back into the rotation, I feel like this team has a shot. The offense is just too inconsistent right now. We scored 14, 15 runs against the Pirates the other day. Come back and we're sweating it last night until we scored big late in the game. It's just too inconsistent. I need guys to start stepping up. I need DD to show me something. I mean, the guy's hitting like 212. He's making $31 million. He needs to play better.
And Tanner, I completely agree with with what you said in terms of, seeing it from his point of view. I agree. Yes, things weren't perfect for you in the Phillies organization. Yes, Max, I agree with you as well. The Phillies organization, they suck at developing players. This is something that we complained about for years. However, you do not go to your new team and you rip your old team. That's not something that you do. You talk about the future and things of that nature. That was just classless. That's just my personal opinion. So, you guys missed any of this episode, you can always go to philly-experience.simplecast.com, available on all major downloadable platforms, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, the entire shabazz. I can't wait till football season. It'll give us something else to talk about, because let's be honest here. The Sixers free agency has been disappointing. The Phillies have been disappointing. I only got the Phillies making the playoffs at this point. I'm just saying, friends.
Go Birds, baby. Go Birds.
You dumbass. Get the you piece of Swiss cheese. Sports.